Welcome to Live with the Eczema Doc, brought to you by Clean Body, where we believe that you can heal your skin from within by cleaning your body. I'm Dr. Fong, a naturopathic doctor specializing in eczema, and I'm here to guide you through the journey of understanding the root causes of your eczema so that you can finally achieve the clear, healthy skin you deserve. Each week, we combine research-backed insights, science-based strategies, and my years of clinical experience to uncover what's really triggering your eczema and how you can take control for lasting relief. Let's dive into today's episode and uncover the next step to healing your skin from within. Today, we are talking about how hormones impact eczema and what you can do about it. Now, oftentimes when we think about hormones, we mostly think about women's hormones, but we are not just talking about women's hormones today. We are talking about women's hormones. We're going to talk about male hormones, thyroid hormones, and our adrenal hormones, and how all of these hormones can play a role in potentially the process of eczema. And, we're going to understand a little bit about each of these types of hormones. And then we're going to break each one down and we're going to really figure out, okay, how do we test for imbalances and what do we do to bring balance to these hormones to help that root cause of eczema. And one of those might be hormonal imbalances. Okay. So if you're having eczema, this might be one to tune into, especially if you are an adult or a teen who is going through hormonal changes and hormonal imbalance. Okay. So how does hormonal imbalance affect or impact eczema? Well, when you have imbalanced hormones, this can affect a lot of different factors, including your skin barrier health. This can alter your inflammation levels. It can cause excessive dryness or even sometimes oiliness, and both can be a problem. And it can affect immune system function. Differing hormone levels can affect how you detoxify. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But why this is so important is because your hormones are really the communicators in your body, and they're messengers that really send messages to the different organ systems. These messages are sent by your brain and they go to your different endocrine or hormone organs to tell your body to digest your food, detox your toxins, make a baby. These are all important things. And unfortunately, if there is a miscommunication with your hormones, then we can have a problem. And that can sometimes have an effect of exacerbating or sometimes even causing eczema if you're predisposed for eczema, okay? So starting with our female hormones, we start here because the female hormonal system is so complex and it changes throughout our lifetime. And so first of all, we have that menstrual cycle, and then we have potentially pregnancy where there are so many fluctuations in the hormones. And then we have perimenopause and menopause. So for females, we really have this ever-changing landscape of our hormones. And month to month, this can look, different. Day by day, our hormones can look different. And this really can be problematic if we have eczema. We might see that we have more flares before a menstrual cycle. And that can sometimes be because estrogen levels are falling, progesterone levels are rising. We might see there that we might have more dryness of the skin. We might have more inflammation at that time. Maybe we have more constipation. Maybe we also have more liver burden because the body actually needs to process that estrogen out of our body. And so it can be very common to actually see a flare right before the period and during the period. In addition, we might have emotional changes. We might be more stressed out and we might have more anxiety, more depression as our hormones are changing throughout the month. And this can also affect eczema. So remember, we talk about the root causes of eczema, and they are plentiful. So when the hormones are imbalanced, and then we have stress and we have poor detoxification, more toxic load. This actually contributes to some of those root causes of eczema. So we can see an exacerbation of symptoms. And so this is very, very common. So what do we do if this happens? Well, we need to do some testing, and we also need to balance those hormones and figure out, how do we actually bring those hormones to balance. So for females, we might want to run either blood test or even a urine test for the hormones. I do like to do a day 20, 21, day 19 to 21 test. This is when estrogen levels are just peaking, and then they're going to start to fall after that. And we can see at this time frame the difference in the estrogen and progesterone ratio here. And if that difference is too wide, then we might have estrogen dominance. So that could be one problem. That could lead to problems like PCOS and other issues. And that can then lead to more inflammation, et cetera. So the hormones do play a role, and they are one type of lab value that I really like to check to really help me understand the entire landscape of somebody's system. And with our female hormones, we could have so many issues right before that period that just kind of contribute, as I mentioned. So if you have PMS, if you get headaches, if you get bloated, these are all signs that the hormones are imbalanced. And if you have eczema, you will also notice that your eczema is probably exacerbated at this time, okay? Other issues, if you find yourself with other hormonal dysfunction issue like PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome, if you have fibroids or endometriosis, these are all signs that you have inflammation in your body overall. So you can have these hormonal issues as a female and concurrently also have eczema. And sometimes the root cause is potentially one and the same. Maybe it's toxic burden, maybe it's poor liver function, maybe it's poor gut function. We have to figure that out. And oftentimes it trickles down to those 6 top root causes that I talked about, where hormones is just another symptom of toxic burden, for example. All right, now moving on to adrenals. Adrenals are your organs that handle your stress. And our stress response is extremely important. So we have that short-term stress response. If we are in that emergency fight or flight situation, adrenaline and norepinephrine will go up. Cortisol also goes up too. And that short-term response is really great for helping us with stress. Unfortunately, we are going to have problems where we're just stressed all the time. And then we have this long-term stress response. Now, when we have a long-term stress response and cortisol is elevated for super long periods of time, we can have issues that actually lead to immune suppression, liver issues, kidney issues, and our bodies just aren't designed to be in fight or flight response for this long. And unfortunately, this is how a lot of us are living in today's world. So this can be problematic, and this can actually affect our cortisol levels, our stress response levels, and it can affect our inflammatory levels and our immune system function. Now, a lot of us who have eczema know that we're taking cortisones potentially for our eczema to lower inflammation. We're taking steroid creams, etc. And cortisol is really great in that short term to lower inflammation. But as we are having too much cortisol over long periods of time, it can actually do the opposite and cause more inflammation in our system. All right, male hormones. Now, we can have a problem with high testosterone. We can have a problem with low testosterone. And each one can cause an issue. So sometimes when we have low testosterone, the male may experience things like hair loss, insomnia, poor energy, poor muscle mass, etc. But then he can also experience dry skin, which then can lead to potentially impaired skin barrier or leaky skin. And then that can lead to eczema. If one has high testosterone, there could be other issues and potentially even more oily skin potentially. And then this can lead to other problems. Maybe that oil is actually feeding the malassezia or the yeast on the skin, and then that becomes problematic too. So again, with hormones, we just want balance. That's really what we're looking for. So too high or too low is not good. It's just, it's what we're looking for is to be just right. Okay. So and that can be hard in today's world, just given all of the disruptors that we have for hormones. And we'll talk about those in a bit. Your thyroid is the next organ system that is the next on the list as an endocrine or hormonal system. Your thyroid is in your neck, and this is an organ system that really helps metabolism. And so you can be hyperthyroid, again, too much thyroid hormone, or hypothyroid. If you're hypothyroid, you might find that you have dry, rough, and flaky skin. And this is more of the sluggish, underactive thyroid. So you might have weight gain and constipation and slower recovery for eczema outbreaks. You might have increased sensitivity to cold. And this can all affect your eczema. And again, you can have these concurrently, right? Hypothyroidism, and then we also see eczema too. With hyperthyroidism, this is an overactive thyroid. And with this, it might be a little different. You might see increased irritation and inflammation. Sometimes people who are hyperthyroid have more anxiety. They can have thin or fragile, excessively sweaty skin, or they're super hot all the time. And when that happens and you also have eczema, as we know, that can exacerbate the eczema. So again, these can happen concurrently, okay? So, when we think about the hormones, they actually all talk to each other. And I like to think that they're actually all connected. And, as human beings, all of our systems are really talking to each other. When we are in fight or flight, this can actually affect all of our systems. So fight or flight, what is this? This is when you're super stressed out, as we talked about before. And your body is saying, okay, I'm going to shut down all of the unimportant things that I do. And I'm going to just turn on what I need in a fight or flight response. And that might be having really shallow breath. It might be having tunnel vision with your eyes. Your muscles get very tense. Your heart accelerates. Your digestion slows down. Your adrenal glands overproduce hormones. Your bladder relaxes, your hands start shaking, etc. Okay. And this can actually affect all of our hormonal systems. So stress is actually one that affects all of the above, not just your adrenal system, but really truly all of the above. And with eczema cases, I often find that there is what we call adrenal fatigue just from living in today's world, unfortunately. And we are just stressing ourselves out. And unfortunately, we're not only doing this to ourselves, but we're doing this to our kids too. And what we are seeing is that a lot of people with eczema are just having what we call adrenal fatigue. And that can actually trickle to all of the other organ systems. So if one has adrenal fatigue, we might also notice that they have PMS. We might also notice that if they're a male, they have low testosterone. We might also notice that's also affecting the thyroid as well. So, again, we are a whole being. And so these hormones are all talking to each other. These are all just messengers that are telling each other what to do. One way that we can really regulate a lot of our hormones is a lot of them will actually peak in the morning. So even testosterone, estrogen, thyroid hormone, cortisol peak in the morning. And as we go through the day, we will see that it will drop. And what we're looking at here with this yellow line is mainly cortisol. And cortisol, again, is that adrenal hormone. And so we'll see that rise in the morning, and it actually rises due to the sun, and the sun kind of triggers us to say, okay, it's time to release cortisol, time to get up. And that's what wakes you up in the morning. So if you are someone who wakes up and doesn't have a lot of energy, your cortisol levels might be lower and your other hormones might be lower too. So not just cortisol, okay? But as we go through the day, these cortisol levels are actually supposed to drop. And by the end of the night, we're actually supposed to have really low cortisol levels. Then we're supposed to be able to go to sleep, and melatonin rises, and then we have a really good night's rest. Now, what can also disrupt this for an eczema case is if you are taking any kind of steroid hormone orally or topically. Topically, we may actually absorb these hormones in through our skin systemically. And over time, if we've been using very high potency steroids, or if we've just been using steroids for a long period of time, or maybe we're kids and our skin is so thin that we're actually absorbing a lot of these steroid hormones into our body, this biological clock can really get messed up. And not only does it mess up the adrenal hormones, but it can actually mess up all the other hormones too. So the biological clock is something that's really important. So, how do we manage all of this? Well, first off, it can be important to just track your hormonal changes, especially if you're a woman. And the reason for that is because we just have this ever changing landscape of our hormones as women. And we have rises and falls of our estrogen and progesterone levels. And so it can be important to see if you're a woman, if your menstrual cycle is regular, first of all, if it's around, 28 to 30 days, if you ovulate at the same time every month, and there are ways that you can check that using temperature or even checking cervical mucus. And also tuning in with the symptoms that you're having. That can be really helpful. And if you're having pretty significant symptoms at any point in your cycle and it does seem cyclical, then we may need to think about hormonal imbalances from a female hormone perspective for you. As I mentioned, managing stress is important for all of the hormonal systems. So if you find yourself in fight or flight mode at any point, at any time, what I need you to do is have some good tools. And at Clean Body, we work on this a lot with our patients. In fact, every week at our weekly coaching call, we have a support group session that happens every week. We do a meditation. We cover how do we regulate our emotions and really get our stress levels down. Because it's not that we're not going to have stress in our lives. It's how do we handle that? How do we manage that stress? And we just need tools. My favorite tool is the 4-7-8 breath. That's the breathing in for 4, holding for 7, and releasing for 8. That is one of my favorites, and it's just the easiest one to do. So the next time you find yourself in a very stressful state, I invite you to try to do a 4-7-8 breath and see if you can actually calm yourself down. And before reacting, actually just identify the emotion you're experiencing. And then that often helps to actually lower the stress response just by doing that. So that's a really great first step. Of course, eating a balanced diet is so, so important. And we have seen even doing things like eating too much meat, not enough fiber, not enough good fats can actually cause you to have estrogen dominance, for example. So sometimes we'll veer more towards a more vegetarian diet for people who have, high estrogen levels, for example. But in general, I really do like everyone to to follow what I like to call a clean food plate. And that means that half your plate is covered in vegetables. And you got some really good protein on there. You got some good fat and you have some good fiber. And if your plate looks like that all the time, that's really going to promote a really healthy and balanced hormonal system. The other thing you want to look into are toxins in your food. So definitely, as much as possible, eating organic food, making sure that the Dirty Dozen list, that's the 12 top foods with the highest pesticides, and you can find this on ewg.org, this list. You're making sure that you're at least getting those completely organic. But if you can, you just want to eat completely organic if you can, because pesticides can be problematic and they can disrupt the endocrine system. You want to make sure to stay away from plastic, for example, in your food containers as much as possible. Those plastic toxins can be really endocrine disrupting as well, okay? So how do you get tested for hormonal imbalance? Well, I test all of my patients for hormonal imbalances, especially if they have passed puberty. So puberty and above, I typically will test for hormonal imbalances. And there's many ways we can do this. So you can get a blood test. The pro of getting a blood test is it's often covered by insurance. So you could use like a Quest Labs or a LabCorp, and it's covered by insurance. Now, the limitation is this only catches one moment in time. And, so I typically like to test most of these hormones in the morning. And for women, we'll talk about it in a minute, but you do have to make sure that you're testing it at the right time of the cycle because these hormones will fluctuate day by day during the cycle. Saliva tests are really great if you want to check for those adrenal hormones like cortisol or DHEA, but you can also check for estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And this will show free or active hormone levels. So, really helpful, especially like looking at adrenal patterns. And so, over the course of a day, we might actually have someone do a saliva test at 4 points in the day, call it 8 a.m., noon, 4 p.m., 9 p.m., something like that. So we can see how the cortisol levels are falling throughout the day. And in this way, we might see that someone's cortisol levels are way too high at night and low in the morning, or vice versa. And we will do something different when we see those labs. And most of the time, there are lifestyle changes that need to be made. And then there are other things that we could do to maybe support the cortisol to find more balance. Okay. Urine tests are really great. They can look at sex hormone metabolites, cortisol rhythm, and hormone detox pathways. So one plus of this is you can do certain tests like the Dutch test, for example, where you'll get like a comprehensive look at the hormones and the detox processes all in one. Oftentimes, this is not covered by insurance, though, so that can be a negative and it is more expensive. And thyroid panels, now, when you see your regular doctor, you might only get like a TSH, maybe a T4. When we do thyroid panels, we actually want to see the entire thyroid cascade. So TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3. And we often do want to look for thyroid antibodies too. So I will often run these thyroid antibodies on my general screens for my first time patients, because often people will have thyroid antibodies. And this means there's potentially an autoimmune disease to the thyroid, but they just don't know about it. And so, can be something important and something that we can preventively treat as well too. In addition, with those thyroid panels, sometimes I like to do nutrient panels if I do find that there are low or hypothyroid or even hyperthyroid issues. Nutrients like iodine, selenium, zinc can be important for thyroid and can actually help to improve those thyroid numbers. And so sometimes it's just that we're missing on nutrients, and that's why our thyroid isn't working well. Functionally, we also want to test the rest of the body, right? Because the hormones can have actions in other places. So we can look for systemic inflammation. We can look at glucose levels to check for insulin resistance. Insulin resistance, for example, can be really associated with female hormone issues like PCOS, for example. Stool tests will tell us if there's gut inflammation and microbiome health issues, but it can also tell us if we're clearing potentially estrogen levels well. And we might look for a value called beta glucuronidase. And vitamin D is also important. It supports hormone and immune function. So there's so many other labs that we might actually want to check so that we can see the entire picture. And looking only at one set of hormones is typically not enough. So I like to actually look at all of the above and all of these functional tests when I am assessing a patient for overall health, with hormonal imbalance only being one small portion of that. Now, I do want to just add this because a lot of patients will tell me they've gotten hormone tests done from their docs. And I said, okay, well, when during your cycle did you get it done if they're a woman? And they're like, well, I don't know. My doctor just told me to get it whenever. And unfortunately for a woman, our hormones are changing day by day. So for estrogen, I usually like to do a day 19 to 21. If I am looking at, certain things like the estrogen and progesterone ratio. But if I'm trying to get a baseline before ovulation, I might do a day 3 through 5. I can do progesterone on days 19 through 21, for example. So, there are times of the cycle that we should be collecting these labs. And if we don't have an exact cycle of, let's say, 28 days, what I usually say for a woman is, okay, why don't we try to do 7 days after ovulation or 7 days before that period is scheduled to come? And that would be about the same as a day 19 to 21 if someone has a longer or shorter cycle than 28 days, okay? So, one of the biggest things that we like to focus on at Clean Body in cleaning up the body and making sure that the hormones are balanced is avoiding what we call endocrine disrupting chemicals. Endocrine system is, again, your hormonal system. So these chemicals are chemicals that really disrupt that communication that we were talking about, that the hormones are basically sending these messages to the body. And if you have these chemicals that basically block that action, you now are not getting the messages to the rest of your body like you should. And this is where we get a lot of hormonal dysfunction. So, common sources of endocrine disruptors or chemicals include plastics. So, you especially want to look at your water bottles, your food containers, plastic wrap, and even clothes can contain some of these microplastics. Conventional cleaning products have harsh chemicals that are definitely endocrine disruptors. I love cleaning with a steam cleaner. This is just the cleanest way to clean your bathroom and all of that. So I love doing a steam cleaner cleaning. And you can check out my product recommendations for my favorite steam cleaner. Synthetic fragrances, this is an easy one. So just trying to get everything fragrance free, especially if you have eczema. And don't light candles in your home. This can be actually pretty toxic. So just looking at all of your products and if it says fragrance, just throw it out. Pesticides, again, as I mentioned, that dirty dozen list, make sure you're tuning into that, okay? And so some things that I recommend, go organic completely. Filter your water because there actually can be a lot of endocrine disrupting chemicals in your tap water. Again, you can go to my product recommendations to check out some of my filters, and then get an air filter in your home. So these are easy things to do where you're just basically cleaning the environment that you are living in and just cleaning up the food that you are ingesting. Now, at Clean Body, we typically work with people individually. We get customized labs, and then we really customize how do we clean up the system and balance the hormones. But we do have some kits that are available, and one of them is called the Clean Skin Drainage Kit, because draining the system is really, really important. Cleaning up the body of the endocrine disrupting chemicals, cleaning up the diet so that you're not consuming these endocrine disrupting chemicals as well, eating a very whole diet, managing stress, etc. All of these are important. And we may want to really help the liver and the gut to do this job of cleaning everything up. And that actually can help to balance the hormones. So even before thinking about supplements that actually even support the hormones, I think first, I like to think, well, why are the hormones imbalanced? And often it's diet and lifestyle. And it's that we have toxins floating around in our system that we actually need to drain out. So we do have what's called a Clean Skin Drainage Kit, and it's got some liver and gut support. So, if you're not seeing a practitioner, although I do recommend you see a practitioner if you are thinking you have hormonal imbalance and eczema and other inflammatory conditions, so that you really can get assessed and get a customized protocol. But this is kind of a nice general way to just kind of get some drainage going on, supporting those drainage organs, and definitely consult with your doctor before doing something like that, okay? All right, so, this could be a really important topic if you are experiencing hair loss, fatigue, hormonal imbalances, PMS, PCOS, if you have male hormonal symptoms, you're not gaining any muscle mass, you're constipated. These are all potential issues that should be addressed, and they'd have to do with your eczema if you do have eczema as well. And if we actually fix those hormonal imbalances, then we potentially actually fix the eczema too. So, this is truly root cause medicine, because both of these imbalances potentially have the same root cause of toxic burden, microbial imbalance, leaky gut, etc. All of these root cause issues that I'm always talking about. So hopefully this helps on your journey to achieving clear skin, and definitely reach out if you have any questions about this topic. I also did write a blog on this topic, so make sure to check out the blog at cleanbody.health/blog. Thank you for joining Live with the Eczema Doc. I hope today's episode provided you with valuable insights and tools to support your journey to healing your skin from within. For more information, visit www.cleanbody.health or check the links in the podcast description. You'll find the studies and resources discussed today on my blog. You can also take my free eczema root cause assessment to uncover potential triggers, or download my free eczema relief guide for quick, practical tips to calm flare-ups and help with your sleep. If you found this episode helpful, please remember to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to help others on their healing journey. And if you'd like to stay updated with future episodes, please turn on your notifications so you don't miss a thing. Please remember this podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult with your healthcare provider or book a consultation with me before making any changes to your healthcare regimen. When you clean your body, you heal your skin from within. Thank you again for listening, and I'll see you next week.